Something happened to you once. A night, a year, a single conversation, and afterward, the world looked exactly the same and felt completely different. Same kitchen, same coffee, same face in the mirror. But you were standing somewhere else inside yourself, looking out at all of it from a new angle you can't quite locate. You've probably tried to explain it as a change of opinion. That word never quite fits, does it? It's too small for what actually moved. In a moment, I want to show you the exact psychological mechanism a great psychologist mapped out. The mechanism that explains why some part of your mind quietly swapped places with another without asking you first. And by the end, I want to get to the part that actually matters for how you carry this going forward. Not whether the shift was real, but what it means to keep living from that new place, quietly, on an ordinary Tuesday, long after the drama has faded. Because you keep reaching for one phrase to describe what happened to you, and it keeps failing you. You keep reaching for the phrase, "I changed my mind," and it keeps failing you. Changing your mind is swapping one opinion for another while you stay in the same room, looking out the same window. What happened to you felt like the room itself turned. Ordinary opinion change is a trade at the edges. What you went through moved something you didn't know was movable. Not what you thought, but the place you thought from. That distinction matters more than it sounds. Psychology has a name for the difference. Once you see it, you'll stop trying to explain your experience as a belief you picked up. A belief was never the right unit of measurement for what actually shifted in you. Here is the mechanism. Picture your mind as a system of ideas arranged around a center. Not a belief, a hot place. William James called it the habitual center of personal energy, the group of ideas you actually work from, the ones that get first claim on your attention, your loyalty, your effort. Most ideas in you sit further out, peripheral, true but cold, filed away. Conversion, in James's exact terms, is what happens when a peripheral idea moves to the center, and the old central idea cools and drifts to the edge. Nothing new was added to you. The furniture didn't change. Only what sits closest to the fire did. Say that back to yourself slowly, because it's the whole shape of what happened to you.
Now the part that will relieve you.
You cannot fully explain why one idea suddenly went from dead to alive, and neither can psychology. Some ideas sit cold in us, known but unfelt. Others sit hot and live. When one goes from cold to hot, everything else has to recrystallize around it. That's not evasion on your part, that's the honest sealing of introspection. Think of a structure that's been standing for years on nothing but dead habit, already hollow inside, waiting. Then one shock, a new perception, a jolt, and the whole fabric falls together at once. You didn't miss the explanation. There often isn't one to find. But it goes deeper than a conscious decision, and this is where the awe comes in. Much of that rearranging happens below the threshold you can see. Emotional shocks, love, guilt, fear, remorse are unusually good at triggering it precisely because they don't ask your permission first. And underneath the personal layer of you, there's a wider layer, what Jung described as the unconscious, that doesn't just run your private adaptations, but binds you backward to people and patterns older than your own biography. That's part of why the shift felt bigger than you. It wasn't only your mind rearranging. Something older than your mind was doing the arranging. So let's steelman the skeptic in you. Maybe this is nothing mystical. James himself noted that this exact pattern, old center displaced, new center installed, shows up as ordinary adolescent growth, the same ages, the same relief, just usually spread across years instead of one sharp night. Conversion in that view doesn't invent a new process, it just intensifies the normal one and compresses it into a single crisis. But notice what that actually implies. It means your psyche came pre-built with the architecture to do this. The event didn't have to be strange to be real. It just had to hit that architecture hard enough and fast enough for you to feel the gears turning that usually turn in silence. Which brings us to the question underneath the question you actually came here with. Was it real? And will it hold? James's own image is almost mechanical. Once the new ideas reach the center in the rearrangement, they seem to lock there, and the new structure remains permanent. That's genuinely reassuring. But I won't pretend psychology can promise you that case by case. It can describe the general shape of the mountain, not guarantee your particular foothold. So I'm curious, honestly, where you land on this. Has your center held since the shift? Or have you felt anything pulling back toward the old one? I'd like to know what you've noticed. Here's what steadies me on the identity question, even without a guarantee. You were never a fixed point to begin with. You were always a center that ideas could occupy. And it makes a real difference to a person which set of ideas gets to sit there, central, running things, versus which sits out at the periphery, technically held, but never spent. That means the self you're anxious about protecting was never the fortress you imagined. It was always more like a hearth. Fires get lit there, and fires go out there, and the hearth remains the hearth either way. That should loosen something in you, not threaten it. So what does it look like to actually live from a new center, quietly, without ceremony? It looks like the world staying exactly the same size while your attention moves to a different room in it. Noticing that what used to feel like the whole point of your day is now background noise, and what used to be background is now where you actually live. James described it as his soul standing planted in what was once, for it, a practically unreal object, now speaking from it as from its own proper habitat. That's not a metaphor for something dramatic, it's a description of a Tuesday. The line from the beginning, looping around one point, then reforming around another. That's this. Nothing in you changed shape, only what you circled did. So you don't need to prove the shift was permanent. You don't need to explain it to anyone who wasn't there. And you don't even need to fully understand what moved beneath you that night or that year. You only need to notice, quietly, without fanfare, that you are speaking from a different place now than you used to. The self was never the point being circled. It never was the fixed thing. It was always the circling itself. I'd genuinely like to hear in your own words what moved to your center and what finally went quiet at the edge.